What I love most about golf is that you can never beat the game. That even if you have the best round of your life, there's still something that you could have done better. And I think it's so mental. When you're out there, it's just you're on your own. You've got no teammates to help you. You can't hide behind another teammate like you can in football or something. And I think it's just a great game to get confidence and to really know yourself as a player and a person.
You know, I'm obsessed with golf. I think about it all the time, possibly too much.
Get it up, Uncle, with Olivia.
What I love most about golf is connection. I think if I had to pick one word, and it's connecting with people, especially now, not often do you get that much time to spend with somebody, whether it's one-on-one or even it's a foursome, but also the connection with nature, the connection with yourself, because you are playing against yourself and what it reveals. And I think an observant person is gonna get a lot from that, which I think is why we all say how wonderful the game is.
Golf is a passion. For the men and women who play the sport, it's incredibly fulfilling, allowing them to spend hours disconnected from the challenges of modern life, enjoying natural landscapes all by themselves or in the company of friends and family. They're often called golf nutters or golf addicts.
Golf is the most amazing game because it looks so simple, yet it's so difficult. You know, you're hitting a stationary ball, why should it be that difficult? But it's one of the toughest games you could ever play. There are so many outside factors, so many elements, and the biggest one, of course, the grey matter between your ears, which is just so very important. It's just fascinating because you never master it.
Well, I think you can't just say what's great about women's golf. You can say what's great about the sport overall. It brings so many different benefits. It teaches you life skills. It's very healthy in every aspect, providing you're not on a cart, you're actually walking.
This anecdotal evidence from golfers has been validated by the Golf and Health Project, a report published by the sport's governing body, the R&A. They found out that golfers live 5 years longer than the general population and that they are healthier and happier. However, the number of people playing golf still remains relatively low, particularly amongst women. So what is it that's holding women back?
So the way that things are now in golf, and people asking whether we need to put up with it, or how it is nowadays, and wow, isn't that bad, or whatever. But just think back 30 years ago when I started playing golf. They wouldn't believe that either. You know, playing in a junior competition and walking off the course and having my card ripped up because I should be playing in a ladies' competition, and, you know, not being able to go off until 12 o'clock because no women were allowed on the course until then. It's changing, and yeah, we're getting there. But yes, in 30 years' time, they will look back and think, my goodness, look what they had to put up with.
There was a rule at a golf club I was at where juniors weren't allowed to play on either a Saturday or a Sunday before a certain time unless your handicap was below, 12 or 10 or something like that, and then you could play. But if you were a girl, that rule didn't apply to you, you know, even if you were off scratch, you couldn't play at that time, which I think they changed the rule quite quickly once that kind of became apparent that that was an issue. But things like that, sometimes it takes there to be a specific case for a rule to change, and in reality those rules shouldn't exist in the first place. So I think some golf clubs, you know, they've got a long way to go, but at least the discussion started now, which is something.
Golf has been played in this country for over 500 years. The first official reference of women golfing doesn't appear until the 24th of April 1738, when the Caledonian Mercury newspaper reports 2 viragos taking to the course with their husbands. The match drew quite a crowd, and there was gambling on the game, which was won by Charming Sally. The next account of women playing golf comes from Reverend Carlyle, who observed that golf was one of the recreational activities enjoyed by the fishwives of Musselburgh. Their physical strength resulting from their day jobs was cited as the main reason for their success, but that success was acknowledged by the Musselburgh Golf Club, who sponsored their New Year's Day competition in 1811, with prizes of a krill basket and Barcelona silk scarves. Golf for women really took off in the late 19th century when the Ladies' Golf Club of St Andrews was established. Old Tom Morris laid out a 9-hole course, now commonly known as the Himalayas, and women members took part in putting competitions. Swinging a club was regarded as unwomanly, so whilst women's courses began being laid out all over the country, women remained somewhat unwelcome well into the 20th century.
My name is Rena Stott, and I'm 78 years old. I first started playing golf around about 1946, perhaps. Yes, when I was about 5 or 6 years old, yeah. We weren't really very welcome on the course, and very, very few juniors played, certainly no girls at all. Just myself and my sister. And of course there was no junior section or anything like that at all. We just played when there was no one else around, so we weren't a nuisance on the course. And we're very aware that it was very much a man's game. I worked 9 till 6 sort of thing. So in the winter time, the only time at all that I could play was at weekends, where we were graciously given freedom of the tee after 3 o'clock. Of course, it's dark at 4.
Yes, there have been massive changes in my lifetime. When we started playing golf in the first internationals, you weren't allowed to, you played in skirts. And then we progressed from there to wearing slacks. But you would wear your skirt to arrive at the golf club, change into your slacks to play golf, change into your skirt to have your lunch, and then change again to go out in the afternoon. So this whole and the colours now and the dress for girls and for the men too has changed dramatically.
How has ladies' golf changed? Not that much actually. I think we're still very much the underdogs. But I don't think any of us particularly bothered, because I feel that the ladies really like to play golf to enjoy themselves, to go out and be sociable. I think the younger players, the ones with potential, for them it's much better than it was for myself when I was young.
Golf's traditions include rules that govern what you wear, when you play, how you play, and who with. Often these rules date back hundreds of years, when men were the sole decision makers. They created a culture around the sport that reflected their interests, but that culture and those rules can still resonate just as strongly today.
The issues that have to be changed are those that surround access. And access is the key thing, isn't it? You've got access to golf clubs for young mothers who are time poor and for young families who haven't got a huge budget to spend on leisure activities. So there's access to that. You know, if you're a mother with young children, you're never going to get typically that block of time where you can go and play a full 18 holes. 6 maybe, 9 at a pinch.
I think the dress code in the UK is still quite restrictive. If you look around Europe and Sweden in particular, you'll see that players are wearing jeans on the course and trainers. It's much more relaxed, which means that families feel more relaxed to go out on the golf course and play golf or try golf for the first time. There's no stuffiness to say you only have to wear a knee-high pair of socks that matches your shorts, for example. You really are much more free to choose what you want to wear.
The last thing you want walking in as a beginner in a new environment is to look like you shouldn't be there, whether that's because the room is full of men or the room is full of people that are from a higher social class bracket than you or older than you, because you know that's what we expect to see at golf. So I think walking into a golf club, if you look like you don't fit in, that's problematic, and that's going to make a female participant trying to take up the sport feel very uncomfortable straight away, feel like you shouldn't be there.
This sense of being other also applies in the workplace.
I've had situations where I've gone to meetings and people have only introduced themselves to my husband. They've sort of looked at me and as if, do you want to get me tea or coffee? I quite find it amusing. I'll sit there and smile. And take it on board, and then usually my husband, bless him, steps in and goes, oh, and by the way, Steph runs the company with me.
There are still not that many female golf journalists. It's still very male dominated, as the industry is as a whole. The first piece that I wrote was about what it's like for a woman to play in a corporate golf day. And I never forget that because, and that's true, I would turn up at a corporate golf day, usually probably the only woman playing in the day, and guys would look at me as if to say, are you here to serve our bacon roll? Oh no, I'm actually playing. Oh, you're playing. And then of course you'd get the male egos coming out on the course and they'd really try and hit the ball and they'd forget to wait for you on the tee, which still happens nowadays.
People heavily embedded in golf club cultures do so because they really like it and that's what makes sense to them and that's what they know, and they've probably been doing it for a very, very long time. If we think about captains of golf clubs and people in powerful positions within golf, they do that because they enjoy it, they like it, it makes a lot of sense to them, and that's what golf is as they know it. So why would they advocate for change when they probably already really like it as it is?
I remember once an old duffer who was up on a par 3 green on a hill, and we were on the tee waiting for them, and with somebody else like a hole behind us. He marched down from the top of this hill, which coincidentally was also where I had a hole-in-one, so I wasn't playing that badly, marched down to me and said, you're holding everybody up on this golf course, you're just delaying everybody. I was doing nothing wrong at all. In fact, I was waiting for him to finish playing on a tee, and obviously I had to complain to the golf course manager. I thought, this is unacceptable, I'm not taking this, and they forced him to phone me up to apologise. But, you know, I'm a young-ish, you know, quite shy sort of player, and you don't expect to be take abuse from old men on a golf course. Why would you want to do that?
Golf was one of the first sports to offer men and women the chance to play professionally, with the Women's European Tour launching just 6 years after its male equivalent. However, the women who joined the tour were forced to do so in secret.
So it was something that myself and a lot of the other girls dreamt of, because that's what we wanted to do, and all of a sudden we're given the opportunity to do it, so it was a no-brainer.
So they had this meeting, and we were all sitting there, and I think some of the American players were there as well. And they basically, Vivian was saying, we have a sponsor, but the sponsor won't reveal themselves because it's a name, somebody that the people would be a well-known name in this country. They won't reveal themselves as sponsoring this tour until they have some players. But of course, from a player's point of view, it was catastrophic to say, I'm going to turn pro, because you immediately, all you've got to do is mutter the words, and you were dropped from every team or every competition. And here we were playing one of the biggest ones of the year. Anyway, but other things had been mooted and been rumbling along for some time prior to this. So Vivian basically sat at the front and said, we need some girls to turn pro. Is anybody prepared to do it? And this little voice from right behind me said, I'll do it. And everybody looked round, Chris True stood up. So then I believe Steph Jolly, myself and Sue Bamford also stood up and said, we will do it. We would have got in the car and chanted our way from Sunny Girls Camberley in this little car down the road, thinking, what have we done? And then we're thinking, we've done all right. We're going to do it. Let's do it. Okay. Whatever it is, Bruce can be our manager because he said he would. So we'll have Bruce. Thanks very much, Bruce Strother and co. Off we went, and I think very soon we were actually quite happy about it, because we said, let the selectors do what they want. Don't worry about that. We want to do this. And to be fair, we wanted to be golf, and whatever we took, we were going to do it. And it was a career. Not just playing, we just wanted to be around golf.
I turned pro when I was 21, and that was 1985. I'd done okay in amateur golf, but I just wanted to earn my living in sport. And at the time, you're either going to play tennis probably or golf if you wanted to be a woman in a professional sport. There was no football, rugby, any of those great chances the girls have got now. And that's why I turned pro, really, because I wanted to earn a living at some sort of sport, and obviously golf was the one I was really good at. And there was about 24, 25 tournaments in my first year, maybe even more. It was a good time. We'd just gone through the Jan Stevenson racy pictures, and there was a lot of interest in women's golf at the time, and sponsorships. You had a lot of sponsorships for the girls back then. We didn't have our fair share, as you'd like to put it, but we were much closer financially to them back then. Now, of course, it's a whole different ballgame. Even on the LPGA compared to the PGA Tour, there's no comparison. It was pre-Tiger Woods, that was the thing. Tiger changed everything.
The women's and the men's professional tours grew in tandem for many years. It wasn't until Tiger Woods burst onto the scene in 1996, winning 2 of his first 8 events, that things changed forever. His success and style of play attracted increased TV viewers, more sponsors, and was the catalyst for a significant increase in prize money for the men's tours. From 1997 to 2008, the total prize money rose from $101 million to $292 million. New records were also set when it came to sponsorship deals, leaving both the men and women in his wake. When performance isn't bringing in prize money, all professional sports people rely upon sponsorship to cover their costs. But brands in golf continue to place a higher value on the men's sport.
I do feel that most brands treat male and female players differently, yes. Some brands, there's a brand recently who have done a lot of sponsorship in male golf, decided to start, thought maybe they should have some female ambassadors. Great news. But then, turns out the budget they put aside for it was frankly insulting. I was pretty cross, to be honest, that I know how much they spend in men's golf, and I was really pretty unhappy that they thought they could get away with spending such a small amount in women's golf.
That support factor is super important, and I consider myself extremely lucky because I had some sort of support that allowed me to get onto tour. But it doesn't come easily, and I have a lot of friends that are professional golfers and still serving drinks behind a bar or delivering parcels in their vans or whatever it is, or dog walking. but they're meant to be professional athletes. And so it turns into this vicious cycle, because you should be practicing to become a better golfer, to produce better results and elevate the tour itself. That's the way it should go. But if you're working a secondary job instead, and you're not putting in the hours to get better, then the quality of the tour starts to go down.
Yeah, financially it's an interesting one with the ladies tour and sort of the way I've developed, because my first year on tour I played mainly the Access Tour, which as a feeder tour isn't going to be financially viable for most people. But I obviously, did pretty well that year and won the Order of Merit, but it would have been touch and go whether I actually made a profit, because out there, unless you come in the top 3 probably for the week, you're not going to cover your expenses. The ladies tour was struggling for a couple of years, so financially you've still got to play very, very well to make it worth it, and I haven't picked my wins very well so far, because out in Australia you get taxed almost half of what you earn. So on paper it might look like quite a nice amount, and once it actually comes into your bank account you're like, oh, okay, well, what can I actually plan for next?
In terms, the financial side of golf is the same whether you're an amateur or a professional, because you still have to pay your entry fee, your practice rounds. If you're a professional, maybe a caddy, so everything's times 2 to an extent. And so if you were to work out a rough formula, a tournament in the UK for me roughly would cost me about £500. A tournament in Europe would be about £1,500, and then an international event would be £2,500, and this is all in pounds. And so depending on how many events you play in a year, if you have a full schedule, you might be playing, if you're lucky, 25 events. If you have a caddy, you've got to pay for their expenses too. And your food, your car hire, like I said, your entry fee, and accommodation, everything else that comes with it, it does really start to build up. And so the issue with the financial things in the world of golf is that when you're competing on Friday, it's cut day. If you don't make the cut and you're not working on the weekend, on the moving day, you don't earn a penny. So now you spent all of this expenditure to come back at a net loss. And unfortunately, in the ladies' game, there's not enough. We're not playing for a big enough prize fund at the moment, where even if you were to make the cut, but maybe towards the lower end, you still can't cover your costs. So I think to make a really good living being a female professional golfer and to be pretty comfortable, you want to be top 50 in the world, and that's playing on the LPGA tour. Financially, when we make the cut and you get a paycheck, dependent on where you play, every country has its own form of tax as well. So that comes out of your paycheck. If you have some sort of management and in the deal they take a bit of your earnings, they also take a cut. To make a good living on the LET, I believe you need to be the top 20 player, at least. And we're talking about Europe here, it's a lot of players, and I think it's important to understand what it really takes if you want to play the game of golf as a living. But of course, you also don't want to be playing for the money too, because you've got to be you have absolutely got to play this game because you love it.
Golf's image has not changed much in the last century. It's still regarded by many outsiders as a man's game for the rich and famous. The publicity the sport gets reinforces both of these ideas and allows some golf clubs to sustain what some would consider to be archaic traditions.
What a woman faces coming into a golf course could be vastly different depending on which facility they go to. There are numerous hundreds of golf courses, golf facilities that are set up in a very modern thinking way, and they probably would not see any kind of gender inequality in the environment that they go into. However, there are places where there is an awful long way to go on this issue, and that is because of the historical way in which they have come about. And I'm talking about long-established golf clubs that will have had gender-specific rules, women not allowed in this room, women not allowed to tee off at this time, and so on and so forth.
Golf's a lot harder for women. It's a harder game. And it's partly harder because of the physical abilities. Now, we don't want to go down the route if they can do this, and we have shorter tees, that's great. But what we could do, hitting out a long rough, for instance, if we happen to go in an area, it is definitely harder. Some women are stronger than others, but if you're looking at your average women, with your average men, it makes it harder for them. On top of the simple fact that the golf courses, they build the golf course, do all this, and then they plonk the ladies' tees ahead. Some golf courses that have been built more recently, they have thought about it a bit more, but probably, in my opinion, not enough. So landing areas aren't in the right place. Par threes, you watched women on par threes. Even some quite good women, they're playing, 5-wood to play into this par three. And you look at the green, it's this big, this shallow, this big. It's designed by the architect, the course designer, to receive an 8-iron, and go down and drop onto the green so you can 2-putt, blah, blah, blah. And the women are hitting 5-woods in. It's really hard. There's nowhere to go. They can't run a 5-wood between those bunkers. Well, actually they can, because they do. Hit the right shot into the greens and play the shots that the course architect wanted the course to be played in. Very few women can do that.
Swing, Maggie. Go!
Did you see it? What do you think about that then?
I don't think I ever felt differently as a girl whenever I was younger. Wexham, the club that I sort of grew up at, was really inclusive, and there was girls and boys there, so you're made to feel like it was all just a part of the same big group, and it was competitive no matter who you were with.
Golf is still quite a sexist environment because I think it is steeped in a class system. Going back into the sort of 1920s, 30s, 40s, where the ladies that played golf were people who didn't have to work. I think their husbands were wealthy men, and I think they paid for the golf clubs, they bought the land, they set up the houses and the golf clubs that went with it, and I think the ladies were allowed to participate with them, but only on a small basis. Because my experience so far in the game have been quite challenging is the wrong word. It's not a challenge, don't get me wrong, it's nothing like that, but I feel as if we have to fight our corner quite strongly to have equal access, equal recognition, equal parity, I think, on a daily basis.
Perhaps the biggest bone of contention, and one that has been known to split a room, comes down to one single word: ladies.
To me, one of the biggest issues, and this might just be me, but one of the biggest issues, and the thing that I balk at all the time, is the constant use of the phrase or the word ladies. We talked about the Women's Football World Cup. We talk about England's female cricketers or women's cricket team. We don't talk about ladies. To me, it's an outdated word. We don't talk about the leading male golfers or any male golfers as gentlemen golfers. We just don't do it. That's the equivalent of the ladies. And to me, it's an outdated word, and we should be just calling it women's. And it doesn't help that you've got the Ladies PGA Tour, the LPGA, and the Ladies European Tour. Let's move with the times. Seriously, let's start using phrases that will appeal, or at the very least not jar with young women, if we want to attract them towards this game. Ladies, the only time you ever see ladies outside golf as a word means a toilet, doesn't it?
Golf is working hard to evolve by addressing the issues that are stopping people from playing. New formats, shorter courses, and mixed events are just part of the cultural changes that the sport is promoting to make golf more attractive to women.
Clubs need women members because golf clubs in this country and all over the world are struggling a little bit, so their main aim should be to get more women into the game. And I think one of the great things golf's trying to do now is the 9-hole, the great thing of the 9 holes of golf, because it's halving the time, and that I think will help a lot, especially women with kids and jobs to balance. If they've only got to give up 2 hours of their day it's a lot easier than giving up 4 or 5 hours to play in 18 holes. So I think 9 hole, the USGA, I know, and the RNA are trying to push that quite a lot.
You know, if a golf club decides to do 3 sixes in a cloverleaf design of a golf course with a crest facility and the ability to go out and play while your son or daughter is having lessons or playing in the creche, you can do that. You cannot make other golf clubs follow, but what will happen, if it's the right offering and you have support for it, your golf club will be a magnet for people to come. If you build it, they will come. And then the other clubs around that may or may not do the same thing will probably sit there and go, hang on a second, we're missing a trick here. That's how I think you end up leading, this recognition of what you're doing. But you have to be brave. I think you have to be brave to be that person who dares to strike out and put your head above the parapet, expect a slap. But you have to be brave.
Gender segregation is something that is accepted by both men and women players, but there are clubs enjoying a revival by breaking with tradition and eliminating it altogether.
Never been a member in a club anything like this. It's just amazing. All the big trophies and things are open to men and women, a thing I've never heard of before. It's a wonderful experience being here, the openness and yet we all still stick to the proper standards for golf. But it's just more enjoyable, I think. I feel it is anyway. I love it here.
I think any time that women are put forward into senior positions, not just in golf, it just helps all the women of the world to try and to get on and move up, because why not? I mean, we're not. I don't know what the world population is, but I imagine it's pretty close to 50-50. So why shouldn't women hold the top spots and be captains of great golf clubs around the country and around the world? It just seems normal to me. It shouldn't be a big deal, but unfortunately, it still is a bit of a big deal.
There are some people who have already answered the questions around how to recruit and retain women. They have careful designed businesses and pathways that cater specifically for the needs of new and existing female players. One great example of this strategic approach is Women's Golf Day, an annual event celebrating women and girls playing golf.
So originally what had happened is I'd been to a number of other sports conferences and saw that other major leagues were looking at women as economic influencers and consumers, and I felt that the golf industry was not doing that. And whether that's buying things for significant others, we're the only industry that I know of, and I've done some research, that has a negative connotation, a golf widow. I mean, we have soccer moms, and they're not playing soccer. They're just driving the kids to the soccer field. So, you know, there within lies a lot of information just in that. But I looked at a number of studies. I love reading this. I've been, you know, on the business side for years. And it said that women were very eager to try golf, but very quick to leave. They didn't feel comfortable. It was intimidating. It was too long. They didn't know how to go about it. It seemed very complicated, and that it was expensive. And as we know in the industry, some of these were not true, but some of them were true. We did it the first year, not having any idea what would happen, and it was very well received. You know, and that's the consumer speaking. That's not an industry pushing something, you know, down the throats of golfers or new people or what have you. So I think it was a combination of short format, fun, accessible, easygoing, inviting, and, you know, informative, and you know, it ended up, I think the first year we had 430 some odd locations in 28 countries. And so we knew we were on to something. And then it's obviously expanded since then to over 900 locations in 52 countries. On the same day. On the same day, everybody.
So what we found is there's so many people out there that want to play golf, but the perception of what golf is that it's an expensive sport for old people who wear rubbish clothes. You know, we have a sign out on the front that is really our ethos. It says all are welcome, and all are welcome. You know, whether you're a golfer or a non-golfer, you can come in the clubhouse, have a bite to eat. And we've really sort of pushed the community aspect from the fact that, okay, I'm a bit self-conscious that I've never played before. I don't have the right equipment. I don't know what to wear. So we provide that for them. We give them clubs. They can wear whatever they want. We found that over 3 years now, we've had just under 100 members join. Not all female, but 100 members join that never played golf 3 years ago. So for a club, for our perspective, over 10% of our membership is now from organic growth.
Often the biggest challenge is getting women and men to look at golf with fresh eyes.
I would say there are still a lot of perceived barriers which aren't necessarily real. So I think if we look at the cost element of golf, I think some people might perceive it to be a rich person's sport. I have to spend thousands to get into it. But if we look at the facts, you know, you can access group coaching for £10, £12 for an hour and a half, equipment included. And I think first impressions are everything really. You know, if I went to a hotel or I went on holiday, my first experience or first impression of that facility is important. So I think it's really important that we do the simple things, introductions, welcome people to the golf. That might be their first experience of golf. So it's got to be amazing, and the industry's got to do that as a whole, because then that person then will enjoy the sport, because we all know the benefits of golf. But if we get that incredible experience to start with, then they're more likely to be retained, and then you play the numbers game with that, and we can start to make a bit of a shift.
Part of the impetus for change is a group of women who have risen from within the ranks of the industry to develop successful, lengthy careers. As well as being trailblazers who are leading the way for the next generation, they have also used their influence to improve the products and services available to female amateur and professional players.
There are more women coming into senior positions. You look at the executive board of the European Tour, there are women there when there didn't used to be. The R&A, their head of communications is a woman. They're looking to you know, they're actively looking to have more women in senior roles, and that sort of percolates across the sport, but the movement is very slow.
I've got an obligation as a lady owner of a golf manufacturer to make sure that our fairer sex is being served correctly. And so it's very important for me to make sure that we can produce really good kit that ladies feel happy playing, and known is designed specifically for them.
I was always quite determined that I knew that I would get to be a director of golf or a general manager. So the fact that I thought that must have meant that the perception wasn't that it was a closed door. I didn't think my gender or anything like that would affect me. I didn't think it would stop me getting to that position. I just felt that it might make it a little bit harder.
I've never felt I've not been able to achieve something or do something because I'm a woman, and I guess it's important to have that view, but I just don't really feel like people have particularly got in my way. Generally people have been supportive, and I don't think I've been particularly hard-nosed about it.
I'm probably on my 28th year within the industry, and I'd say the first female greenkeeper I've seen was about 6 years ago. Never known one or never seen one. You know, we'll always have to shovel harder than the guy we stood next to, and yeah, just because the perceptions, you know, we have to put that extra effort in, and it'll take longer to get to where we want to be, but those barriers will come down at some point. I think the golf industry in itself is struggling with recruitment. So my big thing is if you're struggling with recruitment anyway, sort of excluding 50% of the population then makes that recruitment harder. So, you know, and the female greenkeepers I do know, they're great at their job, you know, like so much passion, probably like you said, they got that work ethic, they prove themselves more, their attention to detail. You know, I'm not saying that the men haven't got that, but they've had to work harder to get where they are. So we always try and take a proportion of the project money or the winter project money to do with the ladies as well as the men's tees. So it's huge. The ladies sections love it that we do that work.
I don't personally see myself as a role model, but when you have a position of privilege, and I think owning a golf company for all its work and the investment we put in is a privilege, because it's a great sport and there are some fantastic people that we work around. I think it is important to send a message that yes, you can do this if you're a woman. This domain does not have to be exclusive to men only.
At the end of the day, there are more men that work in the golf club industry. Therefore, when a high-profile job comes up, there are more likely to be men that apply for that job. To become the CEO of the R&A, you have to have a certain type of CV which has experience and knowledge and leadership skills. That takes time to form. So I don't think that the industry is discriminating against women getting these jobs. I think it is just a case of there's not as many of us applying for it because we haven't had the experience, because we haven't had the time to be in the industry maybe as long as some of the men have.
The future of the professional women's game lies not in the hands of the women who play it, but in those that control its exposure. In this day and age, simply being good at your sport is not enough to attract interest from the media, sponsors, or the next generation. For the sport to become more appealing, it needs to create opportunities for its role models to shine.
We're blessed with a major winner in Georgia Hall who gets it. I think Charlie Hull gets it. I think they recognise that they have a huge role to play as role models to attract younger people to this game. And they, by their very existence, the brand of golf that they play, they make golf what it is, and that is an athletic pursuit, an athletic sport. And that is something that has changed in the game in the last 20 years.
I think role models are very important. I don't think I would have been here today without a few that I looked up to. But I think it's very important to have someone that you strive to be like and that makes you go out every day and want to practice and want to win tournaments. The Rico Women's British Open was a great week for me, obviously. I had so many support and fans come out and watch, and especially on the weekend. I remember being in the last group and the amount of people watching was the most I've ever seen in my career. I got quite a lot of young girls when I finished. They were all kind of queuing, waiting to get my picture, and that was quite funny. But I got a lot of young girls message me on social media saying that I've taken up the sport now because I watched you win, and I think that was very nice and special to hear. So hopefully I can be an inspiration to the younger generation.
When Georgia Hall won the Women's British Open, you didn't have to look far to see the likes of Justin Rose and some of the top male players congratulating her on social media. And wherever you went, whether it be in a golf club or even a restaurant or just in the street, you'd have men and women congratulating Georgia and just speaking and saying how thrilled they were to see what she'd done and what she'd achieved for women's golf in this country.
Laura Davies, she's just a stand-up legend, end of. You know, she's what I call properly normal. She has no airs and graces. We tease her about being the dame. She is phenomenal at what she's done, and actually as a groundbreaker in women's golf.
Again, this is my opinion. Tiger Woods has always been one of my heroes growing up because he quite simply changed the image of the sport. And so if we were to compare what would a female equivalent look like, yes, it would take a lot. It would take utter domination, which Annika Sorenstam has done. The only woman to shoot 59. And I was looking at her achievements the other day. I mean, it's like a 5-page essay. There is absolutely nothing that she has not achieved. My friends who don't play golf see Tiger Woods, they've never heard of Annika Sorenstam. So although us golfers know that she's an absolute legend and one of the greatest of all time, my friends that don't play golf have no idea who she is. However, everyone knows who Tiger Woods is. And I do believe that's because of the media.
I think the way to build role models, or the way to build household names like Tiger or Rory, is through the power of the media. Multiple platforms showcasing their content, whether it be television or whether it be social. And the Ladies European Tour doesn't have that enough right now. We saw it in 2019, the spectacular win at Glen Eagles with the women, European women over the US team. But we need more of that. And we're convinced that if that happens, and we can play a small little part in that, then I think that's beneficial to the game, because there is nothing like, whether it be a young boy or a young girl wants a role model. And there's just not enough of them right now in the ladies' game, and that's only because we have not showcased them on multiple platforms.
Behind the scenes, there are men and women who are challenging conventional thinking to develop events including the Jordan Open, Golf Sixes and the Scandinavian Mixed, which put men and women side by side. As well as providing much needed visibility for the women's game and equal prize funds, these tournaments are attracting new interest to the sport.
I think that there are reasons why women's golf lags behind, but also I can see that it is becoming much more of a priority for the golfing bodies. So, for example, you have the European Tour incorporating women in various events such as the Golf Sixes. We saw the Jordan Mixed Open. We've seen the Women in Golf Charter from the R&A. And this is just a cultural thing, and it's a corporate thing as well, because every corporate policy has a measure of gender equality in it. And if you talk to Keith Pelly at the European Tour, he will say, what's in it, what's the female angle to whatever move it is that they're looking to make.
Women's sports right now are hot, and they are hot in terms of from a commercial perspective. There are not many commercial partners that I talk to nowadays that don't come back and say, what is your women's strategy? And we have one. And so this is the most natural thing that we're going to do, is get involved with women's golf. And it was interesting because we are governed by the players. I work for the players. And we have a tournament committee that determines a lot of our regulations. And in one of the formats that we wanted to change, we wanted men and women playing on the same golf course, same prize purse, same leaderboard, different tee boxes. That's all that we were having. So we had to bring that to our players for approval. And after about a 15 and a 20-minute conversation, they approved it unanimously. And that's because they can see the importance of it. They can see that it will enhance the European Tour down the road. And if we're able to bring in commercial partners that can see the benefits of having men play with women, have a separate women's strategy, have a separate men's strategy, then we're all winners.
The benefits for the game and its players have been captured by researcher Dr. Ali Bowes and by the competitors themselves.
But in terms of the research that I've done around media coverage, we looked at TV coverage of the Golf Sixes event that was in 2018. And some of the things we noticed with that was, in the first instance, it felt very much like the fact that women were involved in a men's event was kind of a story in itself. So almost highlighting perhaps that it was unusual for women to be there, and potentially reinforcing ideas that it's kind of a men's event or a men's space, so to speak, and it was unusual for women to be there. So that kind of dominated pre-tournament, and then during the tournament the women kind of proved themselves. So we had Charlie Hull, Mel Reid, Carlotta Ciganda, Georgia Hall, so some really big names in women's golf. And if you're a fan of women's golf, you know that they're more than capable of playing really good golf. But they felt in the coverage that there was almost an element of surprise that these women had come out and played really good. And you know, Charlie hit the first shot to, I think, 3 foot away from the pin on a par 3. And then from that, how the women were talked about in the coverage kind of shifted. So it was almost like they proved themselves, they showed they were really good. So then now we can talk about them as golfers kind of on the same footing as we talk about the male golfers.
The mixed events have a different atmosphere to the regular events. I think the 3 events that I've played in the British Par 3 Championships on 2 occasions, it's nice that you have a slightly different crowd, it's a slightly different mood, it feels a little more relaxed.
I think the atmosphere is slightly different. I think the women get more excited to play against the men, definitely. And I think when we get to play in a group with the men, it makes us want to play better and show the crowds and the men just how good we are. And I think in general, they're mostly surprised. So I think if we can keep doing that, then women's golf in general will improve.
I'd have no problem with being beaten by a woman at all, because golf is a game of skill and we're basically playing the same course. Whether we're playing a few yards further back, it makes no difference. It's a game of skill. And if a woman shows more skill than you, shoots a better score than you over the course of 4 days, they deserve to beat you. They deserve to win the event.
Golf and its many traditions may baffle outsiders, but for those that play golf and those who work in golf, the old-fashioned notions that once shackled it to the past are gone and forgotten. By looking beyond the golf club gates, we see a brighter future where women prevail.
Working in sport as a woman, whatever sport, golf especially, is fantastic. It's given me such a huge amount, become a huge part of my life. It's brilliant. I mean, honestly, really can't think of any negatives. I would encourage anybody that wants to work in sport to absolutely just go out there and give it a go.
Golfers are special, and maybe that's because it's an individual sport. Maybe it is because the competition is a meritocracy. Maybe it is based on the fact that you only make how good you play, so your discipline and your practice skills are at a whole different level. But these athletes, whether it be men or women, incredibly skilled.
This is a great game. It's very complicated, hugely complicated. If you tried to explain golf to an alien, they'd never get it. It's too complicated. They'd say, "Why do you do that? For what reason?" Because it's fun.
Shot, Louise.
It's fun. It's my fault. Yeah, you are.